I hadn't even returned from my father's funeral when my husband and his mother were already trying to force their way into his apartment. "Break the door if you have to," my mother-in-law snapped. "Half of this place belongs to you now anyway." But when the door finally opened, both of them froze. A man stood there, tall, composed, commanding. His presence alone was enough to make them step back. My husband swallowed hard. "Mama, it's him." For me, my father's apartment was more than walls and furniture. It was a universe of memories. The smell of old paper and strong tea lingered in the air, mixed with the faint trace of his sandalwood cologne. The spacious brownstone in the heart of Chicago, with its high ceilings and worn wooden floors, was my refuge, my strength. I used to sit for hours in the armchair by the window, talking endlessly while my father, Major Marcus Vance, listened. A retired Army officer, he spoke little, but when he did, every word carried weight. Even at 32, I still felt like the little girl he once taught to ride a bike in the courtyard below. My husband, Darnell, had always seemed different, simple, steady, dependable, or so I believed. We'd been married 5 years, living modestly in a mortgaged condo. He worked as a mechanic, I was a librarian. We weren't wealthy, but life was manageable. The real problem in our marriage wasn't money, it was his mother. Louise Booker was loud, controlling, and absolutely convinced she was always right. From the very beginning, she made it clear I wasn't good enough for her golden boy. "She reads books all day," Louise sneered once. "But can't even season greens properly." I tried to keep the peace. I baked the pies she liked. I listened to her lectures. I swallowed my pride. That only encouraged her. When my father's health declined, Louise's visits became frequent, but not to support us. She prowled through my father's apartment like a potential owner, inspecting furniture, praising craftsmanship, and commenting on property value. "This place is a gold mine," she said once, running her fingers along an antique cabinet. "Back when people built things right." My father said nothing, only staring out the window. Later, when we were alone, he warned me. "Be careful," he said quietly. "They're not here for good reasons." I brushed it off. I shouldn't have. That conversation was our last. My father passed 2 days later. Grief swallowed me whole. I moved like a ghost, organizing the funeral, accepting condolences. Darnell and his mother stayed close, putting on an impressive display of concern. Louise wailed dramatically, calling my father a treasure of a man. I didn't notice the sharp glances they exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking. I didn't hear Louise whisper to her son, "Find the documents, get the keys." In the days that followed, their behavior changed. They weren't focused on mourning, they were focused on paperwork. Property deeds, safes, keys. When they opened my father's safe without telling me and removed the apartment documents, something inside me shifted. I was too exhausted to argue then, but the unease took root. Soon after, Darnell began talking about inheritance law, how everything I inherited would supposedly become ours. It wasn't true. And he knew it. Louise pushed harder. She suggested I couldn't handle such a large apartment alone, that it was a burden, that selling it or letting them manage it would be best. Then I found the flyer. A "We buy houses for cash" ad circled in marker, closing in 3 days. That's when I knew. When I confronted Darnell, he didn't just lie, he attacked. He turned my grief against me, making me feel guilty for asking questions. That was the moment I understood the truth. They weren't just manipulative. They were planning fraud. I searched quietly. Methodically. In my husband's locked footlocker, I found everything. My father's documents, pre-filled legal forms, a quitclaim deed, power of attorney papers, already notarized. Only my signature was missing. They weren't planning to ask me. They were planning to use me. I gathered evidence, photos, messages, proof. Their text messages were cold and calculated. They planned to send me away, convince me to sign papers while grieving, and sell the apartment behind my back. They thought I was weak. They were wrong. I contacted my cousin Tasha, a sharp real estate professional in New York. Then I called the one man my father trusted above all others, his old Army brother, Cyrus Webb. When he arrived at the apartment an hour later, calm and unshakable, I felt something I hadn't felt since my father died. Safety. He stood silently before my father's portrait, then turned to me. "All right," he said firmly, "show me everything." And that was the moment I stopped being a victim and became a soldier. Cyrus studied the photos on her phone carefully, zooming in on every detail. I see, he said quietly. Sloppy but bold. They're counting on you being overwhelmed and legally unprepared. This so-called notary, Higgins, is fake. I've seen dozens like him before. I'll dig into his background. I guarantee there's plenty of dirt there. He opened his briefcase on the table. Inside wasn't paperwork, but a laptop and several unfamiliar devices. What are those? Kesha asked. Listening and recording equipment, he replied with a faint smile. Old military surplus, extremely reliable. We need direct proof, clear evidence of their conspiracy. But they won't talk freely if I'm around. They won't think you are. The plan was simple but daring. Cyrus installed tiny, nearly invisible microphones and cameras around the apartment. One in the hallway, another in the living room. Everything fed directly to his laptop. Tomorrow morning, he instructed, leave loudly. Make sure the neighbors hear you. Call Darnell and tell him you're visiting the cemetery and then a friend. Say you won't be back until late. Then come back quietly after half an hour. You still have the spare keys, right? Yes. Good. Hide in your father's bedroom closet. I'll stay nearby and record everything. Once they believe the apartment is empty, they'll come. Kesha felt like she was stepping into a spy thriller, terrified but alive with adrenaline. The next day, she followed the plan perfectly. She called Darnell and told him she'd be gone all day. His voice dripped with fake concern, urging her to rest. She left loudly, circled the block, and returned silently. An hour later, Darnell and his mother arrived. Is she here? Louise whispered. No, Darnell answered. She's gone all day. They moved through the apartment, searching frantically drawers, cabinets, books. There has to be a will, Louise hissed. If he left everything to her, our documents are useless. There is no will, Darnell insisted. By law, I have rights. You idiot, she snapped. Inheritance isn't shared property. Their panic was obvious. Finally, Louise calmed herself. Then we go with Plan B tomorrow at the family gathering. She'll be emotional. You hand her the papers. She won't read them. And if she does, she won't. I'll distract her. Once it's signed, the apartment is ours. Then we sell it and send her away. Every word was captured. At the gathering the next day, Louise made her move. Sitting beside Kesha, she spoke softly about grief, paperwork, and stress. Darnell slid the blue folder across the table. Just sign, he said gently. I'll handle everything. Kesha picked up the pen, letting her hand tremble. Then the doorbell rang. Cyrus entered, followed by a police detective and a legitimate notary. I believe we're just in time, Cyrus said calmly. The notary read the will aloud. The apartment belonged solely to Kesha. Cyrus was named executor. The will explicitly warned against fraud by Darnell and Louise. Then Cyrus revealed the recordings, the messages, the forged documents. The room fell silent. The detective stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Booker, you'll need to come with me. They were escorted out, exposed, humiliated, defeated. Afterward, the pressure began. Lawyers called. Relatives begged. Rumors spread. Lies flooded her social media. Darnell sent emotional emails pleading for forgiveness. One night, broken and exhausted, Kesha nearly gave in. Cyrus stopped her. Do you want to see the truth? He asked. The files he showed her ended all doubt. Darnell had continued scheming, paying the fake notary, dating other women, spending money, all while begging her for mercy. Her pity vanished. At court, Louise tried to play the victim. She cried. She begged, she claimed innocence. Then Cyrus spoke. He calmly dismantled her story, revealing decades of fraud, theft, and manipulation. The courtroom shifted. By the end, the truth was undeniable. Kesha walked out not as a victim, but as a survivor. She had defended her father's legacy. She had protected her future, and the war was finally over. A heavy silence spread across the courtroom. Louise stood frozen, her eyes wide with pure terror. Slander, she finally whispered. This is slander. Slander, Cyrus repeated calmly. He opened a folder and removed an old, yellowed sheet of paper. Then what do you call this? He asked, holding it up. A handwritten promissory note, your signature. A clear promise to repay the debt. Shall we request a handwriting analysis? It was devastating. Louise's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the bench, her carefully crafted image of an honest, hardworking woman shattering in an instant. Your Honor, Cyrus concluded evenly, this evidence proves that fraud is not a misunderstanding created by her daughter-in-law. It is a long-established pattern. A way of life. The judge, stern and unreadable, studied Louise for several seconds. Then he slowly turned his gaze toward Kesha. What followed was procedural. The recordings were played. The forged documents were reviewed. The notary testified and was formally charged. Darnell's attorney attempted to shift the blame, mumbling something about pressure from his mother, but no one was listening anymore. The true climax came when Kesha took the stand. She didn't speak about contracts. She didn't talk about money. "Your Honor," she said, her voice trembling for the first time, "when I returned from my father's funeral, my husband and his mother were already at his apartment door with a locksmith." The courtroom held its breath. They were ready to break the door down. They were in such a hurry to divide what didn't belong to them that they didn't even allow me to mourn my father. She paused, swallowing hard. "I don't want their money. I don't want revenge. I don't even want them in prison. I just want them gone from my life, completely." Silence followed, so deep that the ticking clock on the wall could be heard. Kesha sat down. She had said everything. The truth was out. Whatever came next was no longer in her hands. The judge withdrew to deliberate. Hours passed. In the empty courthouse hallway, Kesha paced back and forth. Cyrus and Tasha sat nearby, waiting. "Calm down," Cyrus said quietly. "After what came out today, they can't escape this." "I don't even want them punished," Kesha admitted. "I just want it to end." Finally, they were called back inside. Everyone rose. The judge read for a long time, listing laws, evidence, and conclusions in a flat, emotionless voice. Kesha barely heard him. She waited only for the final words. They came. Louise Booker was sentenced to 3 years of probation with a suspended sentence. Darnell Booker received 2 years of probation. Both were ordered to pay joint restitution and moral damages totaling $50,000 to Kesha Vance. No prison, but no freedom either. For people accustomed to living off others, probation, police supervision, and crushing debt were severe punishments. As the corrupt notary was led away in handcuffs, Louise and Darnell remained seated, utterly defeated. Kesha walked past them without looking back. Outside, Cyrus and Tasha waited. "Well," Tasha smiled softly. "Victory." Kesha only nodded. "Come celebrate," Cyrus offered. "I still have that cognac your father and I bought years ago." "No," Kesha said gently. "I just want to go home, alone." Back in her father's apartment, she removed her stiff suit, slipped into an old robe, and sank into his armchair. She closed her eyes. It was over. The battle that had consumed months of her life was finished. She had won, but there was no joy, only exhaustion, a hollow quiet as if everything inside her had been drained. Memories surfaced uninvited. Darnell's awkward proposal, Louise's early smiles, shared laughter. Was it all fake, or did greed corrupt them later? She didn't want the answer anymore. She sat there until evening, untouched food on the table, staring into the darkened window. The emotional collapse came quietly, not tears, not hysteria, but numbness. The phone rang. She ignored it. It rang again. "Kesha," Tasha said softly, "how are you?" "I'm empty," Kesha answered honestly. "That's the crash," Tasha replied. "I'm coming over." "Don't argue." 30 minutes later, Tasha arrived with groceries and a bottle of wine. "Friendship therapy," she announced. She cooked. She talked. She filled the apartment with noise, warmth, life. They ate together. Slowly, the ice inside Kesha began to melt. For the first time in months, Kesha slept peacefully. In the morning sunlight, she realized Tasha was right. The emptiness wasn't gone, but hope had begun to grow. That hope pushed her forward. She decided to sell her father's apartment. "Are you sure?" Tasha asked. "Memories live in the heart, not the walls," Kesha replied. "I need a new beginning somewhere else." "New York," Tasha guessed. "Yes." The apartment sold quickly. Kesha moved in with Tasha while searching for her own place. Sorting through her father's belongings was painful, but healing. Among his papers, she found old letters from her mother and a line that broke her heart: "Make our Kesha strong, strong enough to stand up for herself." Her father had kept that promise. Soon, Tasha found the perfect studio in Brooklyn, bright, peaceful, full of light. "I'll take it," Kesha said instantly. Her new life began. She found work at a rare books library. The job wasn't glamorous, but it gave her purpose. Slowly, she stopped thinking about Darnell and his mother, until one day a blocked number called. It was Darnell. He begged, apologized, promised change. Kesha listened and said goodbye. That call reminded her of one thing: running away wasn't enough. Cyrus handled the rest. Using their own debts and lies, he dismantled what remained of their lives. Their condo was seized. Evicted, they were left with nothing. Kesha didn't celebrate. She simply closed the door on the past. Years passed. She built a life rooted in honesty, trust, and love. She married, she had children, she opened an antique bookstore, her dream. One day, reading her father's diary, she found his final words, "Give her strength. Let her become a warrior." "I did, Daddy," she whispered. She had become exactly that. Not through revenge, but through resilience. Her story wasn't about destroying others. It was about surviving without losing herself. And in the end, love stood on the side of truth.